the United States provokes the world to the point of self-immolation. Now, there are a lot of people who have different views about what they should do and about how effective certain things are that are done. But I am going to give a somewhat different introduction than many of you have ever heard or have heard from me recently about what the purpose is of tonight's meeting. Some of us, such as myself, did our first mobilizations against crazy attempts to provoke nuclear war in 1974 with the first operation, which was called MC-14/4. The next year, that was followed by HILAX 75. This was the period when various crises, including crises around the placement of Pershing missiles in Europe, in Germany in particular, was going on. And we had encountered plans by NATO at that time to provoke circumstances that were similar. This involved people like James Rodney Schlesinger, the former Secretary of Defense, and other psychotics. And some of us did interventions against these people. I did my intervention against James Schlesinger in '76. And I will never forget his response to what I had to say, in which he said, well, concerning the Pershings,
This meeting is being
the
recorded.
Soviets or any of the members of the Warsaw Pact are going to be very sanguine or are going to be very active if we place nuclear weapons like seeds along their path. And he did that, just like he was sowing seeds. And I realized that he was a psychotic. This is important because although what we are seeing and have seen in the recent weeks in the United States and have seen since Biden came in the last period, the 4 years of the Biden administration, in fact, which is a form of a coup. Though that's the case that it's been more extreme, it is not fundamentally different. This is critical because there's something important that I want to say before we start to talk about what we're going to do. I realize that people who were not around five decades ago don't know about these things, or don't know how they come about, or don't think about how they come about. These are cultural failures. These are not military failures. They express themselves in military form. They express themselves in tactical form. They express themselves in particular outbursts by particular sets of psychotics. But that is not where this comes from. This comes from cultural flaws, which are tolerated and are practiced and are enhanced and are amplified largely by the citizens of the United States. And it is with the citizens and correcting what goes on with the citizens, which you must start. You do not start with the politicians. I repeat, you do not start with the politicians. You start with the citizens because the problem is in them and in their insistence that they don't know what to do when it is obvious what to do. You stop everything and you change the circumstance. That is how you handle it. And you ally with whomever you have to ally with to get that to happen. Now that, friends, is called classical culture. That's called classical music. That is the music of classical culture. That's why Beethoven said, if I knew what I know about music, if I knew about warfare, what I knew about music, I would show Napoleon who the true emperor is. It's important to just understand this because there's a sort of notion that ideas don't count. They don't change anything. People going out and acting in this way or that way changes something. That is bullshit, friends. Those of us who have spent time, decades, doing both of these things know that it's not that thinking is easy and or rather thinking is easy and action is hard. Thinking is hard. Action is easy. Now, where are we tonight and what do we have to do? Well, there's been something that we did with respect to the two campaigns that Diane Sayre and Jose Vega ran, and in the case of Jose, is running for the Congress of the United States and for the idea of being able to find a platform to create policy and to advance policy. So this is being done, however, as part of an international mobilization. And in that international mobilization, the Schiller Institute took a role because the Schiller Institute was founded as a think tank alternative to and was supposed to be part of the United States State Department. But the United States State Department rejected it. And the reason for that was because it was clear that the only pathway forward to be able to get an actual agreement with the then Soviet Union of 1983 was if you could somehow allow for a series of discussions outside of the immediate realm of military and strategic affairs because of the nutcases that were running around the country at that time. But the Schiller Institute was rejected as a form or a kind of a think tank that could work in that capacity on behalf of the United States at that time. So Helga was forced to create that separately, which was created in 1984. And its founding document was the American Declaration of Independence, but it just changed it so that it applied to all nations. So instead of particular areas where, it simply referenced the United States, she referenced all nations. But she did it that way so that when we would get to the point, such as like right now, the whole world could be brought to bear on working to solve that problem if it became the case that, for example, as it is in this case, the United States was on the verge of perpetrating the greatest crime in human history, because that is where we are. Now, it's not being done alone. Yes, Great Britain is involved, but it's the citizens of the United States that are allowing the greatest crime in human history to about to be perpetrated. That is, they are in the position to stop it. Citizens in Great Britain are really not, because they're subjects. Citizens in France are really not. Citizens in Germany are really not. They can help. But the only people that can actually stop this are in this country, and they must be in alliance with people from around the world to do it. So I want to first of all just say that there'll be a conference. I think a lot of people know this, but I just want to make sure that this is clear. This is going to be on Saturday and Sunday, December 7th. In the spirit of Schiller and Beethoven, all men become brethren. The first panel will be called The Strategic Crisis, New and Final World War, or World Paradigm of the One Humanity. That'll be in the morning. Now, that's where we want to have everybody assembled. We want to have multiple platforms. We're going to try to get people to jointly live stream this, see if we can manage to get as many as 10,000 people for that conference at that time at noon. Then there'll be a panel, second panel, called The Great Projects to Overcome the Migrant Crisis, the New Quality Productive Forces of the World Economy. Now, Diane Sayre is going to tell us about this because a whole pamphlet's been done. And this is to address the motor, one of the major motors of the wars, the general wars, and also the specific war. So that'll be Saturday. In a moment, Scott Ritter is going to tell you about, that's from 1 to 4 p.m. But in a moment, we're going to go to Scott, who's going to tell you about something that's happening, which is not that conference, but is happening in tandem with and in support of that conference and all of the people we've been organizing around the International Peace Coalition. So we're going to come to that. So I'll let him go through that. And that'll be happening immediately at the immediate conclusion of this panel, of that second panel, which is from 1 to 4. Then there's a second day conference, panel 1, the science drivers of physical economy today. And then the second panel will be the beauty of the cultures of the world, a dialogue among civilizations. Now, about that Sunday, I'm going to talk later. I don't want to go through more of that now. I want to focus only on Saturday and what we want to have happen, because we're going to need all kinds of people helping us in every possible way to build the largest audience possible. And we want to try to carry that audience through the day into what Scott's going to be talking about here in just a minute as well, but throughout the day. And we think that this will give us the basis to do a few things that are, again, there's some other matters that will be happening before that conference also with the Congress and otherwise. So I'm going to yield the floor here to Scott. I just want to point out one last thing before we go. And Scott already went through this. If you saw the Friday International Peace Coalition meeting, and I think we have circulated the sections from what he had to say and also what Steve Starr had to say. And on the Saturday show, our Saturday show, we took that out as a section, took Steve Starr, then took Scott responding. You know that it's the situation we're in is changing hour by hour, not necessarily for the better. And it requires that we all be extraordinarily both vigilant and also flexible in what we are going to be doing, because it's going to be coming fast and furious. Changes are going to be coming, and we're going to be required to adjust with those changes and adapt as quickly as we are required to, because we're in a moment where we may be able to catalyze forces much larger than ourselves to act. And we don't want to be closed to that. We don't want to be off time. We don't want to be off balance. We have to be clear about that as a possibility. So, Scott, we're going to go to you next, please.
Well, thank you very much. Yep, on the week of, I guess, Saturday or of December 5th through 8th, I'm putting together with the Eisenhower Media Network and support with, I think, Medea Benjamin and Copink and some others, a campaign, which is no to nuclear war. I mean, we don't need to reiterate it. There's going to be a nuclear war, and we're all going to die unless we find a way to stop it. That's the way I try to tell people. So I have lost all patience with people. I don't care about your feelings. I don't care about anything, because you don't matter anymore if you're not trying to stop nuclear war. So I apologize if I offend anybody, but that's just where I'm at right now, because the situation is literally spinning out of control as we sit here. Decisions are being made right now, which, while we speak, could lead to the events becoming a nuclear war. And so we have to find a way to stop it. So that's why I think what the Schiller Institute is doing is very important, because they're doing something. That's the important thing. They're doing something, and I'm going to try and do something as well. And we're going to try and gin up. There's three, I think, right now when we talk about mobilizing the American public. There's three things that have to be done, in my opinion. First is we need to impart on the American people the absolute dangerous situation they are confronted. I think there's a lot of apathy. I think there's a lot of ignorance. I just think there's a lot of people who don't know what to do. And one of the reasons why they don't know what to do is that they aren't sufficiently compelled to do anything. And so we are going to do our best to educate people about the danger of nuclear war and the imminent threat of nuclear war. And we'll do that by bringing together some of the top experts to talk about it. The next thing is we have between now and January 20th to try and convince the Biden administration that the policy path that they're on is wrong, and to put pressure on Biden to stop it. And if Biden won't stop it, to initiate some sort of action that can compel him to stop it. So There will be an effort to engage members of Congress who, while they might not be successful in, for instance, putting forward an impeachment, I think the media attention that would accrue to um, sitting members of Congress talking about impeaching Biden for leading us down this path would help bring attention to this issue. But the question is, how do we stop the Biden administration from um, continuing down this path? And the third issue is, how do we get the people who ran on a platform of no war and avoiding nuclear war to step up? I'm talking about MAGA, MAHA, the Trump team. These guys told us that you vote for me, we're gonna bring an end to the conflict in Ukraine. We're going to do our best to avoid a nuclear war with Russia. And now we see the conflict in Ukraine deliberately being escalated. The term that's used is Trump proofing the war, so that Trump won't be able to do anything once he becomes president to back out of Ukraine. Trump proofing NATO, Trump proofing relations with Russia so that there can't be improved relations with Russia. What is the Trump team doing now to call this out, to bring attention to it? And so there will be an effort to engage with the Trump team. And again, we're going to do this through congressional action and action on Thursday and Friday, December 5th and 6th. On Saturday, we were planning on doing an outdoor rally, but the realities of trying to put together an outdoor rally at this short period of time and the reality of weather has led us to believe that maybe the best thing to do is put on an indoor rally. Basically a conference. We're in finalizing a very nice venue, and we will live stream it, and we will conspire with or collaborate with other podcasters, alternative media people to get the maximum audience possible. And we'll put together 3 panels. Again, a nuclear war panel, how to affect Biden panel, and how to engage Trump panel. And the idea is to inform as many people as possible about these events. And then on Sunday, the 9th, there will be a book event that will touch upon the importance of arms control and focus on the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty. As you know, the missile that was fired by the Russians was an intermediate range nuclear missile, which had Donald Trump not pulled out of the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty back in 2019, wouldn't have been allowed to exist, therefore would have been fired. But it has been fired. The treaty doesn't exist, and we see an arms race today that's threatening to destabilize relations between the United States, Russia, destabilize the world, and help facilitate this mad rush to nuclear war. So that's what's going on. It's what we can do in the time that we have. I mean, we are looking at it's a very dangerous situation. I just interviewed Dmitry Polyansky, the deputy ambassador to the United Nations, and he agrees that we are facing the most dangerous time, the largest threat for nuclear war ever in the nuclear era. This is a bigger threat than the Cuban Missile Crisis. We are closer to a nuclear war today than at any time during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and nobody seems to, outside of this audience, nobody seems to care. We got to find a way to change that. So thank you, Dennis. That's what I have to say about that.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot, Scott. I'm sure we're going to have some more conversation about it. I'll just say the one thing specifically on the Congress that you brought up is that's exactly the point, is that we need to do anything we can do as fast as possible to act against, their inaction. And there may be many different things that can be done in that regard. Certainly being down in Washington doing lobbying is one thing. We've been, of course, people are writing letters and things like that. But there also may be some people in districts, also former congressmen, that might want to speak out about the issue of impeachment. Well, you raised it before. You said about the fact that if whether they impeach him or they don't impeach, the important point here is that they could do it. It is something that is possible. It was done in 2021. That's how we know it's possible. And it was done in a 14-day period. So, but thanks for that. We're going to come back. I'm sure there's going to be a few questions around that. Now, I'm not sure. Diane, are you there now? I'm just seeing her picture, but I don't know if she's there.
I'm here. I saw Jose. Do you want me to go next?
Well, yeah, why
I
not?
can. Okay, sure. I'll just say, and hold on a second, because I want to first on the Congress thing, because both, as everyone knows, Jose and I ran for office, and frankly, the thing is completely disgusting and controlled, but nonetheless, the pro-nuclear war with Russia zealots are so fanatical that they're trying to blackball people, and I think that people and censor people and target members of Congress. People are aware that Scott is on a number of Ukrainian kill lists. I'm on some of them, Harley Schlanger, Helga, various other people. And there was one that was put out recently called Texty, which has 112 members of Congress. And I'm going to put the link. I'm just going to show some of the list here, if you can see it. I think it has 390 Americans on it. This is a section of several congressmen or politicians. The 112 congressmen were people who voted against sending more weapons to Ukraine. And we can share the list because I think we have people here on from all over the country. And often it's easier to get meetings if you are in the person's district, so that people call in and say, look, Scott Ritter, former UN weapons inspector, is going to be in DC Thursday. He needs to brief you on this situation. I want you to meet with him. And others of the delegation that are organizing. We should really target them because frankly, it's completely disgusting the way that they're conducting themselves. What I wanted to say otherwise is the point of I think these things work very well together because one, we have to stop the rush into thermonuclear war, which is where we are headed. Two, how do we ensure we're not back there again next week? And what are the failed axioms of these delusional, pompous Western leaders that they think that Russia and China are the enemies to be destroyed? They're committing a genocide against the people of Gaza before our eyes, and not just Gaza now, the West Bank and southern Lebanon. What is their view of mankind, and what are they missing? And the point is, what they're missing is that there is an entirely new paradigm developing with this BRICS Plus process, and they seem to think that they're going to stop 4.7 billion people from moving in a new direction. And the 4.7 billion people are not going to be stopped except for nuclear war. So the other thing I'm going to be putting in the link in the chat later when that opens up is this, which is the pamphlet around which the conference is organized. The title, Development Drive Means Billions of New Jobs, No Refugees, No War. And the intro, this is the Shanghai port, which was just built in Peru by the Chinese. It opens a direct trade route between China and Peru. You can imagine the US State Department is absolutely hysterical about the possibility of a transcontinental railroad between Peru and Brazil. You have people encouraging Argentina to become somehow part of NATO. I don't know if that's designed to stop this thing. They are really desperate. But what's the point? The point is that I am pretty sure that people from Peru are not going to be fleeing the country to come to the United States because there's going to be tens of thousands of jobs there, a rapidly rising standard of living. And people, therefore, are not going to risk life and limb to run all over the planet to get away from that. The policy of using human migration as a weapon is evil, and it is genocide. And I think it's designed to create every kind of strife and division that you can. Now, I can report today we had a team out using this idea on actually solving the migrant crisis through this question of economic development, ending this insane policy of overthrowing governments and destroying everyone who wants to get out of poverty. And they actually got a very good response, which confirms my opinion that while Americans may be ill-informed thanks to our horrible media, they are not ill-willed. that most people don't want to kill people all over the planet. But nonetheless, that's what's being done in our name. So sometimes people have a very hard time daring to consider the fact that we could all be annihilated unless they are aware that there also is a way out of the crisis. And that's why I think the two things have to go together, because otherwise, probably other people have experienced, oh, no one wants a nuclear war. Oh, no, they're not really going to do that. They're not. Well, maybe you're just saying that because the fear of considering where we're headed is unbearable unless you have a solution concept. And that's why I think these things go together. And so, as I said, I'll be posting the links both of that texty list and the development pamphlet there. And the conference, as Dennis said, is the strategic situation on Saturday morning. Saturday afternoon is some of the great projects. Sunday morning is science, fusion, etc. Sunday afternoon is culture. And then I think Scott has another event Sunday, the book signing. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. So the thing is intense. And frankly, if you had to do something big, like change the course of history and get us off a trajectory to doom, then I think most people understand you're not going to do it by doing small things. You're going to do it by doing things that are difficult, that challenge the way people think, and that move us in a direction that's different than where we're headed, which takes an enormous amount of energy and getting out of your comfort zone, put it that way.
Okay, good. So Jose?
All right, so I wanted to piggyback off of what Scott had talked about, doing congressional action. And what exactly does that mean? Dennis, you had mentioned districts. Well, first of all, if we're talking about getting things like an impeachment of Biden or any other kind of action happening, it has to be done like now. And I mean like right now, because the next 55 days or so are probably the most dangerous, because that's when they're going to try. And as Scott was saying, Trump-proof NATO, this is probably the most dangerous period of the so-called transition of power that we are existing in right now. And so this requires people to act and do something. So, Scott is going to be doing a congressional lobbying tour Thursday, Friday. Well, I want to give people an example of what kind of congressional lobbying tour you can do in your own home. I wanted to share an intervention that myself and Robert Castle did just now. This is the first time I'm putting this out there. I will be posting this on social media immediately after this, but I would ask people to just take a look and see what you can do. Just for context, this was done on Congressman Yvette Clarke. She has voted for every Ukrainian aid package, although 2 years ago she warned and said, we should not risk nuclear confrontation with Russia, but we should support Ukraine to the bitter end. Slava Ukraini. I am quoting her. So this is the woman that I confronted. She was doing something for a sorority, and the panel was being asked, well, what's next? Why did we lose in 2024? How do we take back the House, and what's next? And so the moment I intervened, they were introducing her, and she was coming out, and they were lauding her, reading her giant list of achievements. And that's why I opened with the line I opened. So here we go. That's my Congresswoman! Woo! My Congresswoman who gets us into endless wars. How come we aren't facing the fact that we're on the verge of nuclear war? Why has Biden allowed the NATO to launch long-range missiles into Russia? We are on the verge of all dying. What good is the social justice in the room if we're going to die? There is a war powers resolution, and you have to stand up and say no more to the war
time. Do not be an embarrassment to Shirley Chisholm. You have to be unbought and unboxed, but all you are is a sellout. We are on the verge of all dying. There's a genocide in Gaza. We are going to have nuclear war, whether it's with Iran or whether it's with Russia and Ukraine. Russia has just launched new missiles. It'll vaporize us, all of us. Look at it. The poverty here in Brooklyn, nothing has changed. Here in Brooklyn and the Bronx. And what? Why are we more focused on giving Ukraine and Israel all this money? What about money for the Brooklyn or the Bronx?
Come on. The United States government overthrew the democratically.
We're all about to die. That's too much. That's too much. We're on the verge of nuclear war. I love
The Congresswoman said in 2022, we cannot inadvertently end up in a conflict with Russia. Now we are on the verge of a nuclear war with Russia because of her vote. That's what's happening right now.
Come on, man. Come on, dude. Out. 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 Come on.
Not tonight, not in my church. Thank you.
There still needs to be some editing done, but I think you got the point. There was a point where that woman says, not in my church. And I think Robert had said, actually, your church should be standing up and doing something right now. That's what we just did. I'm not saying it's the best or most stellar intervention we've done, but there needs to be about 50 of those happening in the next 3 to 4 days. And I realized by looking at possible interventions with Robert that there are all kinds of events happening right now. Especially Democrats are having events where they're talking about, well, what do we do now? How do we organize to take the House back in 2026 or take the White House back in 2028? So they are popping their heads out because they have to, because they know they got mopped, they lost, and they have to show their face and do something. And while I was in that room waiting for the Congresswoman to make her appearance, who showed up in these ridiculous sunglasses, people were saying, just something doesn't feel right about sipping tea and watching the world burn. I hope that something good can happen. That's the kind of conversations that were taking place in the room before the Congresswoman showed up. And that's why we keep the congressional campaign going, because it's all going to happen in the Congress. And if they're not going to act, then they need to be replaced. That's why I'm here running, and I'm running again here in 2026. And that's why I'm working with people like Scott, so that we can do everything we can to avert a nuclear war, so that we can continue to have a country where we can continue to be, divisive, because at least we can be alive to argue and disagree. So I'll pass it back to you, Dennis.
All right. Now, what do we have to do so people can start to ask questions or hold up their hand? They go to the
act button, raise
act
hand.
button, raise hand.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what people should do at this point. And while that's going on, I'll just want to say one thing concerning the specifics of why it is that the culture panel on the second day is not an also-ran. Some people back in the days when the United States used to know what literacy was and knew what culture was about, know that back in 1939, when Marian Anderson was refused the right to perform at Constitution Hall in Washington, D.C., the response from Eleanor Roosevelt and Harold Ickes from the Department of the Interior was to let her sing in front of the Lincoln Memorial. So instead of singing in front of 3,300 people, and that would have been a segregated audience, she sang in front of 75,000 people. And she began with, My Country 'Tis of Thee. Many things are very beautiful about that concert. It was an Easter Sunday concert. That concert did more to ensure a unified United States population on the verge of or on the eve of World War II than several other things that could have been done at that time. And so now that happens to be a case where you see the effect in a direct way. But culture and this issue that we talk about with the music, we did that, of course, on October 26th in the big way too. and we featured it, and we featured it because you've got to get at the emotions of people. You've got to be able to get people to connect with the moment of what is actually happening, not simply the horror of what could happen, but actually the beauty of what needs to happen. And they have to think that they are the vehicle of that. Now, that has been completely destroyed in the United States over the past 70, 80 years by the rock, drug, sex counterculture. That's why people are in such bad shape. Nobody says that because you're not supposed to have opinions about that. But that's the truth. And what's important about that is that we don't mind kicking people in the head or kicking people in flanks they don't know they have. Areas of blindness that have caused them to misjudge their power. This is important because we have to understand the citizens have to think they've got the power to change this. And so that's where our biggest problem is. There are a lot of hands up, so let's go right to that. Now, Jose, do you unmute people? Is that how this works?
Yes, I will unmute people.
Okay, we got Mike Reeves, who seems to be, I think, first.
Yep. Here we go. Go for it, Mike.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I just wanted to say thank you to all of you and ask Scott if he had any more to share on how to find out about how to participate in the events in DC, because I'm going to look into taking a couple days off work so I can come down and help. And then I had a question on the ceasefire discussion going on or between in view of southern Lebanon, if that might be some kind of setup where they're trying to actually get pressure taken off the Israelis so they can complete a takeover of northern Gaza. But if anyone had any thoughts about that.
Well, we'll be putting together as much information as we can. As I said, right now, it looks like we're not going to be doing an outdoor rally. And we're going to organize, and then we're going to close tomorrow on a venue. I don't want to announce the venue until we close on it, but the venue should be able to hold around 400 people. So we're not going to be able to have thousands show up. What we're going to be doing is once we announce the venue, I'm going to be trying to organize through the family of podcasts that we collaborate with to have watching parties organized through these various podcasts, and then ask them to organize afterwards on a local level discussions where we'll have completed our task with the panels live streaming it, and then pass the baton off to them to on a local level have their own discussions, call in, and then we're going to ask them to assemble the questions that come up through these discussions and submit them, and then we'll be doing some special ask the inspector type programs where those questions will be brought together and be answered so that there's a responsiveness. But it will be, I think, similar in strategy to the Schiller Institute, be looking primarily to build an online audience. We will be trying to attract enough people to fill the venue, but in terms of a rally where we would need help in setting things up and all that, I just think unfortunately getting it done between now and December 7th, it wasn't going to happen, and not happen in the way that it needs to happen to be professional, and we're running out of time, so this was seen as the best option to that. But we'll get that information out so that people can plan accordingly. And then regarding to Southern Lebanon, look, anything that's negotiated by the United States is not being negotiated to help the people of Southern Lebanon, Hezbollah, or anybody who's not part of the Israeli government. So I think we have to take this this entire negotiation with a heavy grain of salt. It's not being done to bring about peace. It's being done to negotiate something to the benefit of Israel. That's my opinion.
Okay. Karen? Jose, can you unmute her?
Unmute?
Yeah.
Okay, hi, can you see me?
No, but we can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, all right. So I'm trying to unmute my camera so that you can also see me because I want to show you something.
I don't,
I don't think,
you're not gonna be able to do that, I don't think. Is that right, Jose?
You can do that?
no,
Okay, all right. Well, I'll just describe it to you then. Okay, so I'm a full-time organizer with the LaRouche organization, so I'm into this 24/7. But one thing that anybody could do is what I did today, and I was going to show you this picture, but you can go to Lowe's or Home Depot and buy, you know, a lawn sign that you can put out in your front lawn. And right, and people, I have a big, very busy street in my backyard.
Karen, try turning your camera on now.
It says unable to access camera.
All right, then that's on you.
Okay. Anyway, so anybody can do this. Go to Lowe's, go to Home Depot, buy a lawn sign, blank lawn sign, get a big marker. I made a sign today. I'm gonna put it out as soon as this call is over. It says hashtag say no to nuclear war. And everybody driving past your house in my front street and my back street sees this. And I have had people respond to me from these. This is the third one I've done over the past year. And I've had people respond to me on this who, you know, come by and say, oh yeah, I called my congressman because of your sign and so forth. Anybody can do it. It costs you $10, takes 30 minutes to make the signs. And a lot of people will see it if you're on a busy street. And if you're not on a busy street, do it anyway, because the 5 people who might see it might be very important in terms of recruiting to this effort. So that's all.
Okay. Okay,
Okay.
great. Next is Jim Stamps. Is that right? Yeah.
Go ahead, Jim. You should be able to unmute.
Okay, I found the buttons. Hello, everyone. I just want to be sure of the timeline for December. I understand on December 7th and 8th what we're going to be doing, but also Scott's venue. I heard him start talking about December 5th. Now, I would like to have an email with the timeline for Scott, and I do have the information for the 7th and 8th for the Schiller Institute panels. And what I'm going to do is pass those along to about 7 people I've already talked to. And as far as outgoing Senator Stabenow, she's retiring. I talked to her people and they said, yes, I could forward them links to this so that at least one of the staffers in Washington, he said that they would possibly have someone listen to that, along with what we would send from the Schiller Institute. And also Representative Debbie Dingell, who's my representative, they're not opposed to it, but I said I want to send links to these so you folks would have a heads up. Also, I understand the pamphlet is coming out, and I've received the link to the new pamphlet, which I'm going to forward, if not tomorrow, I'll probably fly Friday or Saturday. So anyhow, if I can have a timeline for Scott's venues where I can pass these links along, that's all I would need. Thank you.
One thing you might do, Scott, is just repeat what you said so that he hears it now, and then we can also put it in the chat.
Yeah, and like I said, once we get the venue locked in, I'll be putting forward flyers and all this kind of stuff. But the 5th, you don't need to worry about. That's action that I'll be taking with others in Congress. It's not a public event. If we would film it and hopefully show discussions that were had, but that's not anything that anybody else is going to be participating in, just a handful of people. It's not an action against Congress. We're not demonstrating. We're not looking to get arrested. We're looking to get into people's offices and have serious discussions with them about serious issues. So I only brought that up just to emphasize the campaign nature and the relationship between that and then the panels we're trying to have on, or that we are having on the 7th. The 7th, the timing again is either going to be 3 to 6 or 4 to 7. I think we're leaning towards 4 to 7. It will be at a venue to be announced, which will be announced tomorrow. There will be a limited number of seats available. We may have to go to tickets to first come, first serve on that. And then on the 8th, there's I call it a book signing event because it is a book signing event. Just so you know, December 8th is the anniversary of the signing of the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty. I was an inspector in the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, one of the people that made that treaty succeed. And I wrote a book, Disarming the Time of Perestroika, about it. So at Busboys and Poets on 14th and V, it's 7 o'clock. There will be a book signing, but what it's going to be is a moderated discussion between myself and Larry Wilkerson about the importance of the INF Treaty, the importance of arms control, and what the consequences of a failure of arms control, bring. And again, the Oreshnik missile fired by Russia is a consequence of the failure of arms control. It's an intermediate missile that would have been banned under the INF Treaty had that treaty still been in place. And then just I think is sort of an added bonus. After Larry and I finish our discussion, I'm going to be joined on stage by a couple of other former inspectors, and we're just going to have a moderated conversation of what it was like to implement the treaty, sort of little history lesson, and people should find that of interest. But that's more of a human factor aspect of it. The policy aspect of it will be in the first half when Larry and I talk about arms control and what the demise of the INF Treaty has done to the current situation.
Well, one
I
of
was just going to ask if those are going to be live streamed.
Yes, both events will be live streamed.
Okay, that's all I'm going to need is the link so that I can capture them and email them to myself. That way I'll be able to pass them along to the people I've been talking to.
Once I get those, I will definitely publish those.
All right, thanks.
Dennis, if I could just take the floor here for a second. There's an event happening, a virtual event happening Wednesday that both Diane and I will be participating in. There's going to be a viewing of Ukraine on Fire, and maybe the person organizing that wants to unmute and talk a little bit more about why we're putting this on now. If they can unmute. Yeah, yep.
Hi, it's Morgan. Jose and Diane, they both agreed to do a viewing of this film and have a discussion on Ukraine on Fire, which goes through the events of the Maidan coup in 2014. And Igor Lopatnak actually gave us a short video clip to play to the audience, just encouraging everyone to join that as well.
Yeah. And it's happening the day before Thanksgiving. So in 2 days, the idea is for people to have something to talk about at Thanksgiving, and people should consider it as a feeder event for our conference and also what Scott is doing for both of these events. So that's just a quick commercial break. And
well, let's just also be clear that if we do the conference on Saturday morning, the way that we're talking about it, that audience should be able to be fed into that evening event without, I mean, at least the American side of that audience. I mean, the audience is international, so it's from all over the world. Obviously, that's late or kind of late, not that late. But that's something else that people can think about just in terms of building these, because what are we doing? These are not about events. What we're actually trying to do is to have activity in between going up to the event, including, by the way, the focus on the Congress, because the issue of the focus on the Congress is not, oh, can we get the Congress to act? Can we get Biden impeached? Yeah, well, you're going to say that because it's an impeachable action, and therefore it must be identified as such. The real point is that they ought to be doing something. For example, how many people from the Congress can come to the event that Scott is doing? Our event they can't come to. They can get on and listen to our event, but what about that? Congressional officers showing up, people coming there to hear it. See, there's a lot of different ways in which we can do things if we begin to think about it. And I just wanted to point that out so that people can sort of think about this in a more fluid way. I see iPad 2. What is the? I don't know who that is.
Yep. Okay, you can unmute iPad too. And I think that's a good idea, by the way, Dennis, as people are lobbying on Thursday, Friday. Just put the invite out to come to this thing on Saturday night, listen Saturday morning, and come Saturday evening. They're already in DC. And getting on a virtual conference is just a matter of clicking a Zoom. And this isn't just true, of course, of the Congress, but also like your family, your friends. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. iPad 2, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
My name is Lanny. I'm from South Dakota. I was a candidate to be a delegate for Dennis Kucinich in 2004. I'm also a member of Veterans for Peace. I just like to suggest that it's time to, once we get this nuclear war stopped, if we do, that it's time to work on getting a third party, a viable third party started. Maybe call it the Workers' Peace Party, and something to end the duopoly that has become the Democrat and Republican Party that have destroyed our country. And I'm too old to be involved in it. I've encouraged my children and grandchildren to be looking at that. And it's time to start doing that now, not in 2025 or late 2025 or early 2026. We need to start doing it now so that you can get at least 15% to be able to get on the stage for the debates. Thank you.
Okay, very good. John Mudd.
Oh, I wanted to respond to him, but all right. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I was just saying that if there are veterans out there who are considering running for office, or that should be intervening, one of the ways to do that would be, of course, running for office or intervening, that, that's something they should consider doing. Oh, excuse me. All right. I'm okay.
John?
Yeah.
I'm older than both Biden and Trump, so I won't be running.
Right.
Wasn't Adenauer
Hopefully
92?
not combined, though, I bet.
Well, if that were the case, that would be great. John, are you? And I actually, Diane, you put your camera on. Did you want to say something before we go on?
No, just saying hello.
Okay, so John, you want to try
Hi.
to unmute?
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. Scott, I love your passion. I love what you do. Jose, great interventions. Takes care of compliments. I love you guys. Suggestion. Scott, you mentioned the administration coming in, administration going out. Maybe we could break it out in some breakout rooms with a lot of groups. Maybe we can find some synergy and some suggestions, some specifics to act upon as a thought. And do we have any form letters? I know some states on the ground level, some of the councils got together and wrote letters about the no war, and that's on the very bottom level. And I know we got to get to the federal level and so forth. But and I don't know, and I know New York is pretty lazy about that. These councilmen are just kind of falling in step with everybody. But if we have some form letters or something that we can use, that would be great. And I was wondering if you guys, Jose, if you've been in touch with the People's Forum, you guys connected. I mean, they're doing some acts. First of all, they're doing some actions, and they bring a lot of people, and they're doing a couple of actions on the 20. I think one's on the 29th. And if you're not on their mailing list, let me know. I'll forward this stuff to you guys.
Well, if the People's Forum will have me, I've tried to reach out in the past, but anyway.
They will. They said they would anyway. I can push them again.
No problem. But I hear your spirit, and yeah, let's just stay in touch.
Okay. So any thoughts on the form letter and the breakout room?
Well, in the breakout rooms, what I would say is this: it's not practical to do physically at the event at the venue, just
Oh,
from.
no, here in these
But
meetings.
what I would say is when I talk to the people that do to do the post event gatherings on their different podcasts, that they could serve as a de facto breakout room, meaning people who've watched the panels in that participation. One of the things they can do is brainstorm and come up with ideas, and then have those again. We can we'll provide them with the ability to to transmit those to us, and we'll consolidate them and see what we can do about it.
Okay. That's interesting. Okay, Drew, I think is next. Unmute.
Oh, hey. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Just a quick question, because there was an event down in the south end of the state, mostly on the brainwashing of kids in these schools under this trans kind of cult stuff. So I was getting leaflets out on the
Drew,
issue.
you mean the state of Maine?
Yes, the state of Maine.
Okay.
Yeah, it's basically it was a parent's thing to basically get them rallying to stop this woke stuff, because they're really pushing this
You don't have
stuff
to give a
pretty
reason.
heavily.
You don't have to give a reason for why they were organizing.
No, but it's good that somebody's out trying to counter, and
Yeah,
give parents the means of fighting back. But yeah, I just made up a little leaflet showing, the quotes from Bertrand Russell, and then quotes by LaRouche on what education has to be. So I was getting that out, but I did talk to a couple of legislators about how many signatures we require to run, for Congress, and they said, well, it's about a couple of thousand, because my congressman is golden, and he's definitely on the, he just pushes the whole Democratic Party line. So,
okay.
But mainly he just said, well, if you got don't run if you don't have $500,000. So that was his warning.
Yeah, I think what's important about this, let me just take that up, because that has come up a few times. That's one of the other reasons. I mean, it's not the main reason, but money is what is is controlling access to the most important elective offices in the United States, in the Congress, federal offices in general, and also a lot of state offices. We all know this. This demoralizes people from the beginning, and it also causes unqualified people to be the primary candidates. We know this. Now, our situation is, though, because it was just a vote for the presidency, and there's a certain heightened awareness by people of how utterly fraudulent and corrupt the process is, that there are some locations and there are some individuals. There may be some former congressmen, for example, or people that are looking at what Dennis Kucinich looked at. Dennis Kucinich is a former congressman. He looked at what was going on with the Biden administration and said it's a violation of the War Powers Act, and it is in fact an impeachable offense. So he put out a letter just saying that. Well, he just finished running for office. Perhaps there are some people, either retired congressmen or others. Maybe there's a couple of people who are veterans who, for example, want to weigh in on the issue of the fight around the nomination of Tulsi Gabbard to head the DNI office, Director of National Intelligence Office. So there are a few instances like that where it's not an academic question, because if it is the case that somebody speaking out right now can do something that can shift the circumstance of discussion in the country about reality. If that is the case, that makes a big difference, and it's not simply talk, because the talk that went on that changed the country through the election that just happened will be amplified, especially over Thanksgiving table, and also we don't know what's going to happen by Christmas. That's exactly what we're trying to act now. It's precisely because people tend to be distracted during periods of time like this that illegal and criminal actions can be taken. So ironically, this time requires greater vigilance and greater action. What I would say is that, as I think Jose made a point before, interventions and just getting from people in the Congress, people standing up right now, or people, as I said, who were former, or for that matter, prominent authors, lawyers, former head of a college, clergy. It's a kind of situation in which those voices make a difference because they're going to be amplified by other thinking and other actions happening in other countries. Remember, we're an international movement. We don't just do things here. And it's always valuable, especially to some of the countries like Russia, for example, who are on the front line, countries in the global south who are on the front line of receipt of the injustice that is practiced, particularly out of London and out of New York. New York even more than Washington, by the way. So I just wanted to point that out. Let me say, I think that's all the questions that we have so far. So let me just go back and ask, first of all, Diane, if you have anything. We'll come back to Scott and then Jose. If other people have other things, please get in the queue now so we can address whatever other matters that we have to address. But Diane, let me go back to you first.
I'll just say we have, what is it, 2 weeks? Less than 2 weeks. Less than 2 weeks. And we want the maximum number of people engaged between the Schiller Institute conference, the events that Scott is doing, the Saturday event, which will hold 300 to 400 people in DC, and the Sunday events and everyone should be thinking of who you can mobilize for this. We have to get the word out. The United States is completely out of it. They just had a meeting in Kazan with, governments representing 4.7 billion people. People here aren't even aware of that. So the combination of events, as we saw the October 26th and 27th event in New York, the indoor peace concert rally followed by the panel that Scott organized the next day, was an extremely powerful package. If people engage, is it worth setting aside a weekend of your time to ensure that there is survival, and not only survival, but a prosperous, enlightened, ennobled human race many generations from now? And that's what we are challenging people to do. So I posted in the chat the link to register for the Schiller conference. Scott, I posted your website. Will this information end up showing up there when it's available?
Yes.
Yeah. So his website is there. I also posted the Texty list because it has the congressmen who were targeted by the Ukrainians, or the State Department funded Ukrainian whatever. These people should be willing to meet with us, and they should listen to the Schiller conference, and they should send people to Scott's event in Washington, DC. We have to put something together that's going to change the course of history in a very, very short amount of time. And I will say that on the Saturday Schiller conference in the morning panel, we're not saying all of the speakers right now, they're not all listed. What Helga said to some of us is that they were so high, some of them were so high level that she wasn't announcing them at that time. So it's going to be a really big deal. And while I think the elections in this nation are quite rigged, it doesn't mean you don't have a voice. We're not in jail. We have our minds, we can think, and we have to organize. That's it for me.
Okay, Jose?
Yeah. I would just say, like, people are calling for things like third parties, this and that. You can already tell that people are thinking about trying to off-put this program to off-put the solution to a ballot box. And I know it's a little ironic coming from me, given that I'm a candidate. But here's the thing. I'm calling on people to just start intervening now. If you want to create a quote unquote third party, you have to start by creating a force in the United States that rejects the entire establishment two-party duopoly to begin with. That's the only way you can ever begin talking about some kind of third anything. Because right now, as as Garland Nixon likes to say, people talk about a third party. I'd be happy with a second, because the Democrats and Republicans are the same party. And so I would just urge people, just intervene. There's going to be lots of events with so-called Congress people coming out of the woodworks in November, December, and even January, especially if they're Democrats, because they have to. They have to answer to their base and their community, why did they lose? And you have to go up there and you have to show up and you have to bring reality to their face. Look what happened in this last intervention. I said, that's my congresswoman, and people laughed because they thought I was there in solidarity with them. And then I said, who gets us into endless wars? Oh, it's actually kind of ridiculous, but because people know it's true. People know what I'm talking about. And people hate being confronted with the truth, but you have to do it anyway. It's the only way you can ever have any kind of semblance of candidates getting into Congress or ever into the White House who are actually pro-peace if we do the groundwork now by starting with what it means to be a citizen. So, yeah, I think those are my last words. Oh, and of course, register for the conference. Scott, keep an eye out on Scott's social medias for his event. People can keep an eye out on my social media. We will be live streaming all events as well going forward, not just these calls, but also the conference. My YouTube and my Twitter will be sources for things for people to watch these things. I'll also be co-streaming Scott's event as well. So people should definitely follow me. If you want updates on how to get on the Wednesday's showing of the Ukraine on Fire, you're more than welcome to follow me on social media. A registration link will be posted there, followed by a discussion with Diane and I and possibly some other people that we'll be inviting. So, yeah, that's where I'll end it.
Okay, fine. Let's go back to Scott. Let me just want to ask you a couple questions, Scott. There are various other things that came in, some text message things and so on. And obviously people were aware of what you did around the Orezhnik missile. I think most people heard about that first from you. And this is just sort of as we begin to go to conclusions. There's a couple of other people that put things up. I saw something from somebody called Millennium 7 who did this. Now I am scared. The new Orezhnik missile attack on Dnipro, he called it. There's a few other things that are out there, but as of now, Scott, given what you were doing, I know you were doing a lot of work. You may have been trying to rest or not, know what you did, but what's your view of where things stand at the moment?
In terms of,
has anything been responded to negatively or positively to the news seeming to sink into some degree in some quarters here in the West? Is there anything that's notable?
What I'm seeing is the NATO and Europe and the Biden administration are trying to, I guess, do the equivalent of a bum rush between now and 20 January. And the feeling is that they're prepared to absorb additional Orezhnik blows, up to including strikes against NATO targets, because that would help them create a web that can't be disentangled from. So, and this is very dangerous. Their sole goal right now, because these are people that it appears that NATO is willing to sacrifice Europe to preserve NATO. That NATO has decided that it is more important than Europe. And likewise, the United States under Biden has decided that the strategic defeat of Russia is the principal goal and objective, and that can be only done through the Ukraine conflict. That if we miss this opportunity in Ukraine, then Russia will emerge stronger, NATO will collapse. So this is an existential struggle. That's what people need to understand, is that the people that are making these decisions right now are not rational actors. They're panicked actors. But my feeling is that they have done a calculation that there's a finite number of Oreshniks out there, and that they can absorb these Oreshniks and basically accelerate this. Another thing that I'm hearing is that if they can get Russia to strike outside of Ukraine, that liberates NATO to intervene in Ukraine, without fear, from their calculation, without fear of a nuclear intervention, because Russia would have committed to a non-nuclear response. That's the theory, that Russia isn't going to implement its nuclear doctrine, even though ostensibly they would be violated. But this is a very dangerous situation, because it's based upon a number of premises that I don't think are I think it's always wrong to bet against a nuclear doctrine. There's a reason why that doctrine was put in place, and it wasn't to to put pretty words on paper. It's backed by real forces that have real missions that are tied to real Russian perception of national security. So I'm very concerned that we're playing a game of nuclear chicken, and we don't want. I mean, if they're right, it does. All that does is delay the inevitable. Meaning, if they're right and they can get the Trump administration, married to this course of escalation, that doesn't mean that we've dodged a bullet. It just means that Trump will now continue the escalation until there's a nuclear war. So we have to stop this, because left unchecked, it will lead inevitably to a nuclear conflict. There's no way that NATO and the United States can sustain this this trajectory in the direction that they're going, that doesn't end with a nuclear conflict.
Right. So that, just to say it, and you've already said it a few times, the point is it's between now and the 20th, which is the critical period, not after the 20th. So the actions have to be taken. And we should, by the way, and obviously that's what, just so you know, we will help you and we'll help ourselves find every possible way around the complacency or the logistical obstacles or whatever else to get the largest possible number of people that will be involved in acting on this. There's a lot of different things that, we just have to all have to just think about. All right. Well, thanks a lot for this. I think people got a lot out of it. We'll be back in touch with people. Of course, there is an IPC meeting on Friday, everybody. Yes, there's Thanksgiving, but there will be, a meeting the next day. We're not turkeys, and therefore we'll be showing up for Friday. So be there, okay, or be there, be a turkey, whichever one.
That's really bad.
So let's well, you don't want to get smoked like the turkey is going to get smoked. That's the point we're making here. Okay. All right. So are we ready to end this?
I'm gonna just end this. I'm gonna end this. All right.